Eating healthy is a challenge, isn't it? It can be so hard, especially if you have a busy family, but it doesn't have to be that way. According to our guest today, Sam Cutler. Sam is a Harvard trained nutrition coach, as well as the founder of the Mindful app, which is Mind FULL app. And we'll link that for you so you can find her. She also has a huge social media influence and audiences on several platforms. And we'll also make sure that you are connected to her that way. Sam's going to give us some incredible ideas today about how to make easy, simple meals that are healthy and that are going to benefit your family's body as well as their mind. She helps to treat the whole body, not just your stomach, not just your belly, but our whole body. So enjoy the show, please, and will help us welcome Sam Cutler. Hi, this is Mary Jo Tinlin from Teaching Your Toddler. Today, we have an amazing subject and a great guest as well to talk to us about some whole foods and how we can model that for our children. So, Sam Cutler, welcome to the show. Tell us a little bit about yourself and also about Mindful.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mary Jo, for having me. I'm excited to be here today. For anyone that doesn't know me, I'm Sam Cutler, and I'm the founder and CEO of Mindful. And Mindful is a lifestyle medicine app designed to help busy women at all stages of their life, whether you're a mom, a CEO, or a student, no matter what you're going through, really simplify lifestyle medicine. And lifestyle medicine is basically what we think it is. It's really lifestyle habits used as a primary mode of care for our health before medical intervention. So everything from the way that we eat to the way that we sleep, our thoughts, our stress, all of that used as really our primary care of medicine. And there's so much study and information behind this around the scientific data of how this actually changes the trajectory of our lives. So that's a huge chunk of what we do. And I'm so excited to bring this to moms everywhere.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so fantastic. So, tell us a little bit about like eating, about food. Let's talk about food.
Yeah. Gosh, there's so many things to say where to start. I think for today's topic, I think that the way that we eat at home and what we are exposed to really formulates our experience with food and our understanding of food. I'll talk a little bit of my own personal experience. I actually grew up with really healthy parents, which I'm so fortunate for. Not always the case. I still grew up in the 90s during diet culture, being a primarily at the forefront of women's health, and unfortunately still is today. But I really did have parents that were really focused in health, and I think they got into it a lot later. And I remember as a kid being kind of sad that I didn't have Dunkaroos in my lunch, and thinking like, how come I don't have this, and why do I have all these chopped veggies and healthy options? But I do think that we learn what we're exposed to, and over time that became my nature in a lot of ways. I had a lot of different chronic health conditions after leaving my home, which is interesting, after kind of going into this point in university, being out on my own, and then into the workforce, really into my 20s, combated with a lot of chronic health conditions because I didn't really know how to feed myself. So I love my parents, but they prepped a lot for me. So I think what's really important is involving our children in the process so that they feel like they're cooking, they're learning, they're not just walking away with a done for you kind of recipe, I guess. And it's funny because we talk about this a lot on Mindful as well. Instead of giving you a cookie cutter, we really involve you in the process and challenge you in that as well. But I really think that makes such an impact in our home life, and it impacts everyone around us when they're involved in the process. So getting your kids into it, your husband, your friends and family, and also talking about the why. So not just this is healthy or this isn't healthy, but why is something beneficial? And I also don't love the like conversation around good or bad or healthy, unhealthy. I think it's really about the benefits that nutrients bring to us and down to different vegetables. What does that give you? Or maybe even asking our children, how full do they feel after they eat meals? Or how hungry do they feel? So we do this thing in my household, and I don't have children yet, and I hopefully will at some point because I love kids. But I do this with my husband. And I think it's a fun way to kind of involve whoever's in your household of asking them before you eat a meal, how full do you feel? And it's a subjective question, right? There's no real true answer. When you go to a doctor and you say, oh, I broke my arm, they're going, what's your pain level on 1 to 10? So they can know what to kind of support you with and maybe prescribe you. It's the same sort of idea. So you're making it up. Where do you feel on your kind of normal scale of really empty and super full after Thanksgiving dinner at a 10 or whatever? Getting your kids to know what that feels like for them is so valuable. I wish that was something I would have done, but now I do that almost every single meal, and it becomes our habit to kind of get to know what feeling full or feeling hungry feels like, so that we can advocate for ourselves and the nutrients we want. And just, really educating and involving them in the process, I think is really fun.
Oh my gosh, I've never heard of that approach, but that's so good. I mean, it really goes along with being mindful, right? Like you're understanding like what does your body feel like before you start eating and then after you start eating, and to be able to say, "Oh my gosh, I am full," or "I'm too full," or or maybe I'm still hungry, right? Like we just don't really teach that. We do it ourselves naturally, but we don't talk about it.
And I think a lot of people don't actually know what feeling good feels like.
Mm.
And that's the biggest problem. We have an epidemic of people feeling like crap, and women in particular, because we have our hormones to consider consistently that are fluctuating. And whenever we think we have a grasp on it, it's a new layer to our cycle, or it's a new stage of life and things are changing. We really never get a hold of it, especially going through the fluctuation. We have a lot of women that are moms on the platform that come to us postpartum, and they don't really know what to expect also if it's your first child as well. And so really having the support and the tools there to understand what your body is going through. And women need different anti-inflammatory resources, because we go up and down so much with inflammation through our cycles, through these different changes, through childbirth, all of that. So focusing on anti-inflammatory foods becomes that much more important and valuable to us, to really regulate that throughout our body as well. And we know a lot of that is made in our gut. And when we have severe inflammation in our gut, it affects our hormones, it affects our mood, it affects everything else that's going on, our skin, our hair, our nails, like all the fun, superficial stuff that we love, but also the internal stuff, right? Our energy levels, our bowel movements, all of that that's coming from inside. And we're really often pushing that to the side to get the easy, quick thing. But there's ways to get the easy, quick thing and still support ourselves in a more anti-inflammatory, nourishing way. And that's really what we're trying to share with Mindful.
And so if someone's listening to this and they're like, I don't really understand what anti-inflammatory means, like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's break it down. Ultimately, there's certain foods that are causing not just foods, environmental factors, lifestyle habits, but a lot of it is food. And that's what we have a lot of control over and what we choose. Unfortunately, so much of our environment we're exposed to. But a lot of those different things will create inflammation. Now, there's also different ingredients that lower inflammation. And so disease really forms in an inflammatory environment in our body. So the more inflammation we have, the more opportunity disease has to grow in our body. And not just to disease the traditional way we think of it, but also those sort of chronic conditions like constipation, like a severe adult acne, so many things that we don't necessarily think of as a disease. We're not necessarily just talking about cancer and Alzheimer's and all these things that might be later on down the road and hopefully not on our path, but the immediate impact. So we love to also bridge the stuff that's happening now that we can kind of see immediately with the stuff long term, because when we're dealing with women in their 30s and 40s, it might not always be their first forethought. So all of those choices that we make by lowering inflammation today really change what's going on in our bodies today, but also the future of our health. Um, and so when we're talking about anti-inflammatory foods, there's many that we can start to incorporate in our diet. My favorites, like things like turmeric, adding in, ginger and leafy greens are so great if we can lower the inflammation in our gut in general, which is going to be having fibrous greens, prebiotic, probiotic foods. I'm a big, big, huge fan of things like sauerkraut and kimchi in our diet. Anything that's fermented is so nourishing to our body. And I'm just going to, for anyone that doesn't know gut health as a whole, I'll give like a tiny little synopsis on it. But essentially, our gut is this whole ecosystem that's happening. And we have our microbiome that is a combination of both good and bad bacteria. I love to kind of just simplify this as basically like the good kind of fighting the bad, if we just make it as simple as possible. And certain things that we do will fuel the good or will kill it off.
Mhm.
And so basically the good we need, strong and healthy to there to fight the bad bacteria. And a lot of that bad bacteria, yes, can come from things we eat, but also comes from environmental factors, and all of different things that we're exposed to. And so, and our cleaning products, like really everything does. And sometimes they're not things we have a choice over, right? We can do the best we can. But I think one of the things that we try to also say is we got to do our best most of the time. But the
Yeah.
reality is, we also have to lower our stress and not be so consumed with the idea that, oh my gosh, I need to change my cleaning products, my food, like we're living in this world and the reality is that we're exposed to it. So, what do we have in our daily choices that can change the immediate moment that we're in and that we can kind of add into our routine and add layers? Like, don't leave this podcast and go throw out everything in your home and in your kitchen and your cleaning products and like everything, because you're going to get too overwhelmed. It's starting with internally, what can you do in your kitchen? And that's going to impact your body in such a substantial way. And then your home and your kids and your family are going to be impacted by it.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thanks for explaining that. So part of what
Absolutely.
I think you started to talk about with your parents and with
Yeah.
what you can do is that role playing or that role modeling, sorry, about healthy eating. So once you start to make some of these changes and incorporating some of these foods that you've just mentioned, like how do you sort of start to influence your kids that way?
Yeah. I think, I never grew up really thinking that healthy food was gross, but a lot of kids have this thing like, oh, broccoli, or I don't want that, in my meal. And not just kids, by the way, it turns into adults who feel that way too. But I think, involving them in the process and realizing that these yummy, delicious foods can turn into this delicious meal at the end of it. So seeing what really goes into things, because when you look at it at the end process, you might say, oh, this tastes good, but you don't realize that, oh, this actually came from broccoli and carrots and, whole grain rices and lean chicken or whatever it is. And it ended up on your plate in this way. And so understanding, I think the building blocks that create that meal makes you less intimidated by the one ingredient items themselves and how it turns into that healthy thing. One of my favorite ways is kind of turning something that's not necessarily the best for us, or maybe traditionally really processed or heavy in processed sugar, and flipping it into a version that's less inflammatory, that is a little bit more whole foods focused. Like, can we make this version? Sometimes it's a little more complicated than buying it at the store, but it's a fun process to go through and to see.
Oh yeah, yeah. It feels better. Like when you can say, I mean, I know we have a brownie recipe that's like it's gluten free and it's grain free and it's all the things and I love making it and it tastes to me it tastes the same. And so I love knowing that I can eat that and not feel too guilty, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of the things that's so fascinating, and actually we hear from so many moms in particular, is that so in women's health, unfortunately, because diet culture has been at the forefront of that for so long, we look at weight as a single source of truth and
Mm.
as our North Star when it comes to health, when in reality, it actually isn't, right? Unless you're in a dangerous weight zone, it's chances are that is not a strong metric of your health. We have so many other factors that we should be considering before we're even looking at a number on a scale. However, we crave that sort of like results driven um experience. And so we look at weight and we've been told to look at weight when it really doesn't actually result in how healthy we are. You can be high in weight, low in weight, whatever that factor is. And it has to do with muscle, it has to do with your body composition, but it also has to do with inflammation heavily. And so I hear a lot from women postpartum that they think they still have this weight, and I do say this with quotations, to lose after their baby, like a baby weight. And really, it's actually that they're still really inflamed because their hormones have not regulated still. And they haven't been eating properly or sleeping properly or caring for themselves. And I can only imagine how difficult that is when you're a new mom. But are there little ways that we can simplify that process through things like meal prep, stocking our fridge with easier access to whole foods, and really educating ourselves, and then we can step back and see a difference right away. I have so many women on the platform that message me, oh my gosh, I didn't actually need to lose weight. This happened in like a week or two, and inflammation has gone down just from lifestyle factors changing around me. right? And
Mm.
you're thinking it's something else, but it's really bloating or inflammation because of the foods you're eating or the environment that you're in.
Mhm. Oh, that makes me feel better. I like thinking about it not as a number because I try not to weigh myself because it does make me sad, even though I don't like that number. And even though it's a
Right.
dumb number, like why? Right. Like I
And
still
who
have
made
a
up
yeah.
like the number it's supposed to be? Where does that, like, it's so relative to every single thing in our lives and every stage we're going through and water retention and muscle versus fat versus height. Like there's just so many things that it actually is not that strong of a metric. I honestly think there's a lot of stuff coming out, but BMI is kind of wild. Like that's crazy when we talk about BMI.
Ah,
Some can feel super healthy and feel strong, and then they'll go to the doctor and they say like your BMI shows you're overweight or you're on the verge of being overweight or something like that. And I think it needs to be redone in this country. Like I really think we need to relook at, much like our nutrition, those factors need to be really, really dissected and reconsidered for everyone listening's children, for the future generation, to not be in the same like cycle that we've been in for years.
I love that. I think that's very innovative thinking, and I would love to see something else revised like that. So tell us a little bit about some of the, maybe if you have some recipes or some easy tips or something like that to be able to incorporate some of those healthy choices. Like you said, when you open up the fridge and the kids are starving, what can they grab that's easy and that, or maybe what can you make that's still healthy but fairly easy for the families?
So our whole thing is meal prep's not realistic for everybody, and I think sometimes can get a little boring. I like it, but it's not always the most exciting thing that you can do. So I'm a really big believer in ingredient prep. And we do this a lot on Mindful, where so within the platform, we come out with a meal plan every single week, and it's all video based. And we do something a little bit different. We actually don't give you any measurements. And so this is kind of controversial because people love to have a tablespoon of this or how many grams of chicken am I supposed to eat? And that's why we talk about things like how full are you, right? Can you lean into the way that you actually feel? And how does that translate into what nutrients you're missing? And I always say, okay, after your meal, if you're still hungry, what did your in ratio to your plate, what did your protein look like, right? What were the healthy fats looking like? These things that keep you fuller longer.
Mm.
And so within Mindful, we do things a little differently, where we break it down into super simple. A lot of our recipes are like 5 to 10 ingredients, so simple, easy to make. And sometimes it's kind of like combining versus even really cooking, which I
I
love.
call it assembling, right? Like,
Yeah, assembling. You're like, it's a
yeah.
salad, it's a bowl, it's a wrap.
Mm,
It's just simple. And we all
mhm,
are busy, right? That's what we want. And so I like to really lean into the ingredients and the ratio it plays in your meal, making sure you're getting healthy fats, fiber, greens, protein in all of your meals, and then assessing how you actually feel from that. So it's really this trial and error. But the easiest way to do that is, and to prepare for that within the week, is to have ingredients that repeat
mhm,
consistently so that you're not actually wasting, because then you get to play with your meal. So if you're making a wrap and you're saying, okay, I want to add a little bit more chicken, but I'm not sure how much more. And I kind of want to see how this feels for me. And if I finish it, I'm still a little hungry. I'll have some chicken and some quinoa on the side. Then you have that ready in your fridge. So you have that flexibility without the waste in the same way. So I like to, any type of grain on Sunday, I am preparing, or any type of like whole grain, like a rice, or I love quinoa. It's super high in
mhm,
protein. If anyone listening is vegan, it's a great way. I add it into soups, salads, wraps, like everything. All of that takes sometimes 40 minutes on the stove to make, or 20 minutes if you have the quick one. I don't want to bother with that. If I'm having lunch, it needs to be done. So you can prep it, put it in a Tupperware, keep it in your fridge, it's ready. I also think a great hack is having an air fryer. This is like, people don't
mhm.
have it. This is God's gift to the kitchen, I swear. It makes everything so simple. You can toss in, your veggies, and they're done, and they're ready in like 10 minutes or so to kind of get everything ready. But pre-cutting that and having it done on Sunday is really, really great. We also consistently have, hard-boiled eggs in different meals, chicken, simple type types of protein that lasts in the fridge for 4 or 5 days. You can also prep that all on a Sunday or whatever day is easiest for you. I love a Sunday because then you're ready for the week, but it gets you to the weekend, right? And that's what we really need so that when we open our fridge, we can reach for something that's simple. And then it involves your children in that process because they can also reach for something when they feel hungry and get to know what that's like. So if you have pre-cut up veggies or like those lean proteins, those grains, all of that ready to go. It simplifies the process. Honestly, no shame. If you need minute rice too and you're running low, like that's also just get things that are going to simplify stuff for you and making it easier so that you can food combine, assemble, as you said, Mary Jo, you got that. I think that just makes things a lot easier day to day. So we kind of repeat those throughout the meal plan. So if there's quinoa, you're going to see it 2, 3 times throughout the week so that you can play with your individual portions. And it just makes the process fun because if you do cook with your kids, you're not heating up the rice for 40 minutes and running back and forth. You're going, okay, here's our 6 ingredients that are already ready. Let's assemble this together. Let's learn about how
Mhm.
this combines together and makes things really fun and easy. And then maybe you guys make, a dressing or a sauce or something, but it just makes it quick and simple.
I love that. That's awesome. And then as my sort of cleanup, I just make a big soup. If like I have a bunch of
Oh,
stuff and I just throw it all in there and let it simmer for an hour and we have
yeah.
soup. Yeah.
Joke in our household because my father always says, I'm going to extend that. That's his thing. So if there's leftovers, he's like, I'm going to extend it into a soup. And then, or it comes from the meal turned into a salad, and then he extends it into a soup. So my husband and I always laugh and we laugh.
Extend.
We don't
I
even call it
like that.
leftovers. We're like, what are we extending tonight?
That's really smart. And
Yeah.
it's such a good way to also continue to use, like, I hate throwing food away. It makes me so angry to buy food and then throw it away. So I love that idea of extending.
Yeah. And it just really makes everything easier to know that it's going to be there. And when you're repeating ingredients consistently throughout the week, you can always come back to what you feel like you want more of, right? If you're feeling hungry after, there's no reason you shouldn't be eating more. That's as
Hmm.
simple as it is, right? And your body's telling you that for different reasons. And like I said, as women, that fluctuates consistently, but not just from like week to week, from day to day, based off of your activity levels, your stress levels. Something people don't really pay attention to as much is that mental energy is still energy. So although we think we have this sort of like stress eating, there's two different versions of stress eating. There's stress eating as a coping mechanism to distract ourselves, numb a feeling. We're grabbing a bag of chips. We're just kind of like,
Hmm.
I can't think about this. I'm distracting myself. But then there's also eating because you're more stressed and because you're demanding yourself more of yourself. You're in the office later. Sorry, you're running with your kids to practice here and you're jumping back here, and then you're also running a business and you're doing all these things. When you demand more of yourself physically and mentally, you need more nourishment. End of story. So we can't bucket stress mentally and all of that stuff that we're putting on our body as, oh, I'm stress eating. That's not the case. You
Hmm.
need to ask yourself, am I coping or numbing or distracting myself from something? Or does it make sense right now that I'm more hungry? Right?
Hmm.
Am I changing in my cycle? Was I working out a lot? Was I with my kids a lot, running around this summer at camp, doing all these things, right? Have I been, up late prepping for a vacation that we're going on? Whatever it is, you have to give your body the opportunity to speak to you and also accept it instead of fighting it and understand what it's telling you so that you're equipped with the information that can make changes for you in your lifestyle. And that's really why we don't give portions, because what's going on in your life is going to be different than what's happening in mine. And what's happening in mine today will be different than mine next week. So it's not for me to say, this is how many grams of protein you need, because it's going to fluctuate. Instead, let me equip you with that information and that valuable education so that you can now use it anywhere, not just at home. When you're out for dinner or drinks with your friends or other families, whatever that looks like, you have the ability to have that information and take it with you.
That's great. I love it. It just makes it so much more turnkey, like what you were saying, and then if you need more, you just add more. And if you've got all these sort of components, then you just if the family still needs more food, you just add to it. It makes it so much more flexible. I love that approach. It seems so much more practical than just like what you were saying, like I have to have a palm-sized piece of meat or whatever it is, right?
Right. It's so outdated in my opinion. And everyone's needs will change consistently. And there are certain signs that our body tells us for specific things. And the more you lean into that and you get really clear on what your body's telling you, you'll start craving certain foods that are associated with what they're very forward in. For example, you're craving healthy fats and you're wanting an avocado or something like this. Or for me, it's like if I'm craving more protein, I always go to salmon because I love it. But my body connects it with what I'm craving. And I'm like, I really want salmon. I just need a giant piece of salmon. And you don't really know why, but we have to trust that it's for those reasons, right?
Mhm.
It's connecting that with, it's the same reason we smell something and then we're like remembering a moment from years
Mhm.
ago and we're able to make that connection. It's our body being smarter than us,
Mhm.
honestly. It really is.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
try to control it so consistently and it just isn't really, we're meant to work in this cohesive way with our mind and body, but we really do try to fight it, especially in our society now with all the demands that we have.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And it really does sound like you're just really talking about intuition, right? Like listen to your intuition, listen to your body and listen to what it needs, not what
Yeah.
somebody's telling you or yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, thank you so much. Before I let you go, what else do we need to know? And then please tell us also, make sure we can all find you on your app and everything like that.
Absolutely. So you can find me on socials on at the Fit Fatale, like the Femme Fatale,
Mhm.
um, fitness. So that's my personal socials. And then you can always check out mindful.so. And it is spelled mindful with two L's because we're filling up your stomach, cup, and soul. And it's all about leaning into, like I've said so many times, how full you actually feel and how that resonates with you and your body. And our socials are mindful.so on all platforms as well. So you can check it out. I'd love to give your listeners a promo code or
Oh yeah.
something and we can add in. What would work? Maybe toddler 50 or
Yeah,
something?
that sounds
Okay,
good.
awesome. Toddler
Toddler
50, and we
50.
can do 50% off their first month if they want to give it a try
Awesome.
and jump into the Mindful app. We also have in the app, it's not just nutrition. So we have meditations as well. We also have different experts in there that pop in for guest exercises that they'll do. We have a somatic healer. We have a naturopathic doctor talking to gut health. So different experts that can help guide you in specific areas. We also have a whole library of coaching videos. So if you're looking for questions, kind of like how I just spoke to those stress, the difference between stress eating and eating because you're more stressed. Those are different things we talk about. Sugar, caffeine, all of these ingredients. And then we also have a lot of supplement suggestions, supplement videos alongside all of our recipes that are video based.
That's
So
amazing.
everything in there. Yes.
Awesome. Well, that's great.
And a community is the last piece where women can connect, share videos, photos, all that. It's all within the app. And so many moms are sharing like favorite recipes with their kids and smoothies they're having. So they're on the other side waiting to
Oh,
connect and support because I know it's a busy and a tough time for moms, especially to prioritize themselves because they're doing the work, growing the future
mm,
generation. So
absolutely. Well, we'll absolutely make sure that these links are in the show notes as well for people so that they can use the promo code, use the links, find you everywhere. Sam, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was such a pleasure, such great information and ideas, and I know that the listeners are going to get a lot out of it. Thank you again so much.
amazing. Thank you so much for having me, Mary Jo. This was great.
This has been the Teaching Your Toddler podcast with Mary Jo Tinlin. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you'll find us on our website at teachingyourtoddler.com, as well as on Facebook at Teaching Your Toddler, on Instagram, and on Twitter at Teaching Toddler. So join us again, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you so much.